Apple has updated the 27-inch iMac, and here are 5 things that we hate about it. So I'm joined again by my good friend Pete. Good to see you got the memo about the shirt colour today, Pete.
Yeah, stop copying my style.
And here we've got the iMac, the 2020 27-inch iMac. And it's fair to say that we're both iMac users going way back. I go all the way back to the first iMac.
Yep.
That was actually my first Mac. And for the most part, they're very lovable machines.
But we do love them, to be fair.
And we do. But there are things that are not so great about this new iMac. So this is 5 things that we hate about the new iMac. And I'm going to just kick us off with the soldered on SSD, or for our American viewers, soldered on SSD.
It's soldered, okay? But yeah, what a nightmare that is, because this is an expensive machine. It produces for us warranty concerns. You know, if you've got something in this that has an issue. Obviously in this country, in the UK, we're protected by quite stringent consumer laws.
So let's just cover that off for the international viewers. So in the UK, if you go and buy a computer, the retailer who sells it to you, so if you buy it at the Apple store, that is Apple, has to warranty it for 6 years. Has to be fit for purpose. So if the computer breaks in that time, you're entitled to a replacement or a refund from the retailer. I'm simplifying, but the laws are quite tight. And if they try to repair it and they fail one repair, again, you're entitled to a refund or a replacement. And so in the UK, we do have Apple Care as an option.
Yeah.
But it's not as important as perhaps if you're in the States or in other places around the world. And I think it's fair to say that there's plenty of news stories about people not getting the service from Apple, not getting the replacements, and sort of being left in the lurch a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, an SSD card these days, you can expect to have, 10 years life out of it on average. Yeah. But we know, as with any manufacturing process, there are going to be duff ones which don't last that long. And it's going to be really galling if you're just outside of warranty and an SSD fails on one of these. Because you can't fix it, you can't replace it, you can't swap it out. And that could affect resale value potentially. I
think it will have an impact on resale value.
Yeah. So a bit of a miss there from Apple, I'd say.
It is. And when you look at the teardown pictures as well that OWC did, you can see that there are solder pads on the board for what looks like an M2 SSD slot, but there's nothing attached to it.
No.
Whether or not that's, I've heard that if you spec it up with the higher capacities, that's where it lives.
Right.
But so could it be in the higher capacities you do get something that's not soldered on? I don't know the answer to that. In any case, soldered on anything is bad. That is the way things are going. I don't want to moan about it on and on, but soldering the SSD on sucks. So we don't like that. It's
a compromise, isn't it? The smaller you make things, the less space you've got for physical connectors. So you can't have both, I guess. Although it's got to be said, they've removed all of the traditional spinning rust hard drives from these systems. So there is a fairly big gap inside the case now. So yeah. Anyway, we don't like it. No, we don't. What else don't we like, Pete? We don't like the fact, and this isn't new for this iMac, we've never liked the fact that the ports are on the back. Now, I have to qualify this because one of the things we love about the iMac is it looks gorgeous. It's clean, it's minimalist. You haven't got all sorts of ugly ports on the front. So if they put them on the front, we probably would say that we hate them because they're on the front and they look ugly. But practically speaking, it is a nightmare. Imagine you've got this installed up against the wall in your office or a panel, what have you. You need to get around the back. And that's fine, it spins quite easily, but it's that horrible moment, isn't it, when you're trying to find the USB port or scratchy. Yeah, and you just get this horrible. Yeah, it's not a winner. And on your new, very expensive Apple Mac. If you've got it all set up as well with loads of cables at the back, it is a real pain to have to fish around behind the computer. So I still think that sucks. Yeah, but I think it would suck wherever they are. What about the SD card slot? Now, we featured this in our love video because, of course, it is now faster supporting UHS 2, but it's still a non-latching card slot. Yeah. Now, you know what I mean by this? Because when you go to put a card in your camera and you sort of click it in, you know it's in position. So it's reassuring, isn't it? It's click, click. Feels quality, but with the Apple doesn't have that mechanism. You just sort of slide it in and you've got half your SD card stuck out the back of your Mac.
And something I've noticed with the ports, I mean, going back to the MacBook Pro when that had an SD card slot on the side, is if you get the card in at just slightly the wrong angle, it snaps off the
sort of little splines, the fins of the SSD card.
You end up ruining the card. And you are going to get it crooked because you've got to reach around to the back of the computer and you can't see what you're doing. So it destroys SD cards. So I've never used it. I always have an external SD card reader.
And then, of course, talking about ports on the back, let's continue on that theme. Only 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on the back of this beast. Now, the Mac Mini has 4. The iMac Pro has 4. The MacBook Pro, if you spec the higher end models, have 4.
Yeah, so on the 13-inch, the higher end model has 4, yeah. The lower end model has 2.
Yeah, that's it. This has 2.
It's not enough, is it, for a desktop computer? I mean, some people would say, hang on, no, Thunderbolt 3, I don't have loads of Thunderbolt 3 peripherals, 2 ports is enough. Well, that misses another point because the Thunderbolt 3 ports are doubling up as USB Type-C ports.
Yes.
And in this case, USB 3.1. I'm going to stick to the old naming convention. USB 3.1, 10 gigabits per second bandwidth. So there are 2 of those.
Yeah.
But there are 4 Type A USB ports.
There are, but they are only 3.0 spec.
Yeah.
So that's 5 gigabit.
So why not make those ports 3.1 spec? So
there's no reason why they couldn't have done, is there?
No, because Type A connector does support that faster speed. So I find that a bit frustrating. So you've only got 2 ports for fast connectivity and you're essentially sharing that between USB and Thunderbolt. I don't know, I get the feeling it's not a radical upgrade, it's just a token gesture.
Do we think these are the exciting new Intel Macs that Tim Cook talked about at WWDC?
I hope not, but I suspect they are. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, something else that I really don't like about this is that the standard specification for this comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM.
I know, that's crazy.
So if
absolutely crazy.
If you pick any of the 3 off-the-shelf specs, so if you go to the Apple Store to buy one of these, it comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM.
And what's that enough for these days, would you say?
Well, it's not really enough for anything serious, not serious computing.
Nothing is the answer, Dave. Nothing. Nothing.
Most people who buy a 27-inch iMac, unless they're just buying it because they want a huge screen and they want the look of it, are buying it because they've got specific work to do on it, whether that's video editing, photo editing, development, whatever it is. That type of user is going to want at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. So why not offer it with 16 gigabytes of RAM as a minimum? I mean, you basically are increasing the base price of all of these 27-inch models because the first thing you're going to need to do is increase the RAM.
Yeah.
And
which you can do on the Apple site when you purchase it, can't you?
You can, for the ever so reasonable sum, Pete, of
£200 for an extra 8 gigabytes. 200 English pounds.
Absolutely ridiculous.
And mad. And if you go up for because you can of course upgrade this to 128 gigabytes of RAM, that's going to set you back £2,600 from the Apple website.
That's absolutely crazy.
It's daylight robbery.
I had a look on Amazon. You can get a good quality 8 gigabytes SODIMM of the right specification for the Mac Pro for £30.
It's just like, that's a fraction of the price, isn't it?
And if you want to do that 128 gigabyte upgrade, and most people don't need it or would never even use 128 gigabytes, let alone even 64 gigabytes. But suppose you do want to put 128 gigabytes in, I've found that for under £480.
So what we're saying is for double the upgrade Apple want to charge you for a measly 8 gigabytes, you can spec this all the way up to 128.
Yeah, and have a leftover 8 gigabyte stick to sell on eBay.
Well, there you go.
And for most people, 32 gig, probably enough. Well, suppose you go for 64. Well, then that's probably about the same price that Apple want to charge you to upgrade this to 16. We all know about the Apple tax. We don't need to bang on about that. At the end of the day, Apple can charge what it wants. And if people are willing to pay it, well, then that's great for Apple, I guess. Yeah. I don't actually mind it if the RAM is upgradable.
As opposed to soldered on, who would do something like that.
Yeah. But if I can upgrade it myself and buy it cheaper, then I don't have an issue with Apple charging what they want. I do have an issue, though, with them deliberately speccing the machine under what it should be. Setting those base models at 8 gigabytes when they know that everybody's going to want at least 16. it just doesn't feel right. You know,
Disingenuous.
Disingenuous is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So those are 5 things that we hate about the new iMac. The soldered on SSD, really detest that. Ports on the rear has always been a niggle. The SD card slot, we don't like it. Lack of ports, 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, not enough. Standard RAM being just 8 gigabytes, that's crazy as well. There are a few other things as well for dishonourable mention.
Yeah, so this 10th generation i9 that you can spec this up with sounds great. And to be fair, as we said, but it's a bit of a monster if you upgrade it to that. But then so was the previous generation of this machine if you spec'd it to the hilt. But for a lot of people, it may not quite be the upgrade they may be expecting.
Yes, so just so as we're clear on this, Intel is still at the same 14 nanometer manufacturing process. So the die size of the CPU hasn't changed.
No, they're just cramming more into it, aren't they?
Yeah, so putting 2 more cores, so now 10 cores in the space of 8. And what that means is that it's going to build up heat faster. So Intel actually don't guarantee the turbo frequencies anymore. So this CPU certainly has the power, but it's probably suited to workloads where it bursts. You know, you have bursts of activity. If you've got a sustained workload, you may find that this CPU doesn't actually outperform the previous one.
Yeah.
We've yet to do some proper testing on that, but it's probably not as good as it might seem.
Definitely. And then the starting storage for this as well, 256 gigabytes. This is a similar story to the RAM, isn't it? That is not enough for a machine like this.
It's not, but you know, Apple even start the Mac Pro off with 256 gig SSD. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Do you think it's because they're expecting everyone to just be, you know, using, as we do for our editing and content creation, you know, separate SSDs now, and so there's no point in having a big onboard drive?
I think that is true, and that is certainly the way that I work. Although for my laptops, I do have a terabyte SSD in each of them, which I'll come back to why I've done that. But I do use that because I've got it. But I tend to use it just as temporary storage space. I do most of my work on external SSDs, as anyone who watches the channel will know. The reason why I bought those is because for both of those machines, I bought them at end of life and I got a massive discount on them. So if you buy the top spec model and you can get it for a good price, you get a better resale value in the future because there aren't as many of those top spec machines around, so you stand out from the crowd and you get a bit more back.
Yeah, and particularly as we've established, the hard drive is not upgradable. The SSD is soldered on. Most people are probably going to have to look at upgrading this at the point of purchase if they're serious about their resale value.
Yeah, I think it would be silly probably to spec it with anything less than a terabyte. And this is what irritates me is, you know, you get these people all the time who are saying, you know, you can buy a cheaper PC than a Mac with equivalent hardware, which is sort of true. It kind of misses part of the picture, but let's not get into that now. Certainly you can go out and buy a Windows machine, a Windows all-in-one for less money, and it will almost certainly have more space on the hard disk included in that price. So there doesn't really seem to be a reason for Apple to stiff people like this on the SSD size.
No, absolutely. Although I know this is a 5 things we hate about the iMac, but as we've established, it is a tremendous value for money machine when you consider the gorgeous display you get and everything else. So perhaps something we can forgive, the fact you need to make some informed upgrade choices at the point of purchase.
Yeah, for sure. I got one final dishonourable mention, and that is that there's no fingerprint reader, of course, and no facial recognition. Now, part of the T2 chip, of course, is that it handles those security measures in your iPhone and your iPad. And also on your MacBook Pro, the MacBook Air has a fingerprint reader. You know, if they were upgrading the webcam anyway, would have been nice to have facial recognition in there.
I wonder if that's a deliberate omission, because if they are going for perhaps new designs with the Apple Silicon-based machines that we know are coming very soon, if they're going for fingerprint recognition, then that's going to require a new Magic Keyboard. So maybe they want to hold back that new piece of exciting hardware to go with their Apple Silicon-based machines, rather than introducing it with probably the last Intel iMac that we'll be seeing.
So just to be clear on that, we're not expecting this one to get replaced with Apple Silicon immediately, but there certainly is rumours of the smaller one being re-released as Apple Silicon either late this year or early next year. So we are expecting that to come. So those are the things that we found to hate about the iMac, and I have to say it was hard to find things to hate about it because it is, at the end of the day, such a great computer. And you know, I understand you can go on the Apple site, you can spec it up to some ludicrous amount of money, but
That's amazing. We should do that.
of course, the reality is no one's going to be, I hope no one's going to be silly enough to do that. You know, you don't need an 8 terabyte onboard SSD. If you've got Thunderbolt, you can have as much storage as you want. You certainly don't need to pay the Apple tax on your RAM. So again, if you want cheaper RAM, links in the description. Save yourself a bunch of money and help support the channel as well. So that's it for 5 things we hate about the iMac. If you'd like to see 5 things we love about the iMac, check out the channel. We've got that video up as well. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Help support the channel. Hopefully we did enough for a thumbs up or a thumbs down if that's your thing. In any case, see you next time for some more geekery.